Fans, my name is Kris Kloss, and this is Cali's finest right here on the Wrestling Chatter YouTube channel. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the Wrestling Chatter right here on YouTube. Now, this one was awesome. This one was great. This was my brother, my commentating brother, Todd Keneley. This guy and I, we parallel each other so much in pro wrestling, it kind of blows my mind away to the point where we almost forgot we were talking about California. It was one announcer talking to another announcer. We talk about the days where I was in XPW and he was in UPW, basically competition indirectly. All that and a whole lot more. We talk about he and I, the English broadcasters in Spain for Orlando Jordan and the Ultimate Warrior. I mean, man, oh man, the list goes on and on. I will stop now. I digress. Here's Todd Keneley, and here is Cali's finest. Todd Keneley, good old pal, buddy of mine. Welcome, my friend, to Cali's finest right here on the Wrestling Chatter YouTube channel.
Thank you, Kloss. It's a pleasure to be here, man.
Yeah, it's been a little while. We have an interesting parallel. I mean, I'm going to talk. This of course is me interviewing you, but there's going to be moments where we can talk about our parallels in pro wrestling. We worked together in the past, but even prior to that, you and I almost had like the same position as far as Southern California pro wrestling goes in terms of companies that were established and on television at the same time. We'll get into all that. It's very interesting. Our respective leagues we were working for were basically competing for dominance at that time.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I mean, clearly you were entrenched with XPW and I mean, they were bringing in, I remember at the end of my time at SC seeing flyers and stuff and, bringing in huge talent and, ECW guys and bringing that whole vibe to the West Coast. And then I had gotten my start at UPW, at Rick Bassman's UPW.
Yeah.
So, and that was kind of a breeding ground for WWF at the time, WWE. So that's, Cena and those guys came through there. So a different style, but certainly both making big waves in the area.
Right. We'll get into all that. And man, good having you on, Todd, because you and I not only, basically so many parallels. We're almost the same age. I think, what do I have, a year on you or something? I think we're a year apart.
I think so. Yeah, maybe so.
76. You were born 77 or 75?
Yes. 76.
76.
Yeah.
Oh, what month is your birthday?
December.
Oh, so I'm February, so we're almost a year apart. But anyway, but that's the thing. We both grew up in that same era. Both grew up in, and you're originally from Southern California, correct?
Correct. Yeah, born and raised.
Okay. So where did you grow up exactly?
So I was born in San Diego, and then my family moved up to Northern California. So we were up there in the Bay Area. And then moved back down to South Orange County when I was, maybe 4 years old. So Mission Viejo, and then stayed there basically forever. Went to high school there, played football there, then back to LA with USC, and now I'm down in San Clemente, down in South Orange County. So
all right, now this is I usually interview wrestlers on this show, so I know it's in your blood, Todd Keneley, but I was getting there. If you let the announcer guide you, remember, you're not doing the interviewing this time. You're actually being interviewed this time.
I'll sit back.
Please. Come on. Damn it. No. No, but that's in our blood, man. You and I were both announcers. And no, I'm kidding, dude. We'll go back and forth and be the Todd Keneley, and I'll be the Kris Kloss. We'll get in there, and then we'll be our real selves at times, which I want to get into also. Like in pro wrestling, we'll dive into that, how the dynamics of a character, let's say, like a pro wrestler that you see on television, and then you meet him in the back or whatever. Those are two separate people. But like me, I use my real name. You use your real name. the lines are blurred a little bit with us, because you would think we're the same guy. I'm the same guy you see on TV. You're the same guy you see on TV. But we also are two different people. Todd Keneley, Kris Kloss on TV. Kris Kloss and Todd Keneley in real life, totally different people than Kris Kloss and Todd Keneley on wrestling TV. We'll get into that. But no, okay, so you grew up there. And then now talk a little bit about when you first, Todd, and again, it's kind of parallel. I'm gonna be able to relate to you quite a bit. But when and how did you like get the bug before you got into working pro wrestling, just becoming a fan, and then knowing, oh man, this is I get it. This was all I was somehow want to be a part of this.
Yeah, I got the bug in the mid '80s, right around the time of the first WrestleMania. So yeah. I remember tuning in. Yeah, I think it was Channel 11 Saturday mornings. But watching, I remember being at my grandmother's house and watching TV with my brother, and he's flipping through, and there was a match. I remember it pretty vividly. It was Andre the Giant, and he was in one of those handicap matches with like three enhancement talents, three guys, and had them all in the corner in the shoulder blocks and stacked them all up in the center of the ring and sat on them and waved. And my brother went to like change it. Oh, no. Hold on. Let's see this. And then from there, I just, I grew really interested in it. And I remember seeing the wrestling superstar LJN figures in the stores.
Okay.
And the commercial, if you remember the original commercial for that, all
yes.
of the wrestlers were in the house, and, Superfly came off the stairs, and Hogan and Stud were battling it out, and Sheik was there, and they're all, and so I was just like, oh, this, is amazing. So I remember like just begging to go to the store and getting the figures, and then started, kind of watching it religiously from there. And I remember I used to go to my brother is 3 years older.
Okay.
So let's see. So I would have been, I was like 8 years old at the time when I really first got into it, 8, 9. Okay. And so I remember taking the LJN figures and going to my brother's like junior All-American football practices, and they had the big blocking shields, and it was like a big blue blocking shield, and I would put it on the ground horizontally and make a ring and sit there and put matches together, and and then eventually had the ring and everything. And if you're anything like me, I mean, back then I just like I think I immediately resonated with commentary. And so when I would play with those figures, I was constantly like announcing it,
Right. And all the other kids, well, I'm not all the other kids, but usually you're going to emulate the Hulk. You're going to emulate Junkyard Dog or Ricky the Dragon. But you had your characters like Mean Gene, Gorilla Monsoon, Jesse Ventura, Gordon Soley, if you got deep into it at that time. But yeah, I remember like, for example, I would in school, I mean, I'd get in trouble because I would do Howard Finkel, like, ladies and gentlemen, and then my teacher would come in the room like, making his way from, and I introduced my teacher to class. And it was like, I remember I would get in trouble, but I remember like way deep down, I knew like, gosh, there's something here. I'm not trying to get in trouble. I know there's something here that's good. You know what I mean? So
yeah, you do a phenomenal Finkel, by the way.
Oh, yeah, brother. Thank
you. Yeah, I mean, even back then, it was just like kind of define things. I remember in third grade, it was Halloween, and everybody could dress up, and you'd kind of parade through the other classrooms with your costumes, and then so I had gotten this Hulk Hogan mask that I swear to God, I mean, it's like this wide. It had actual like hair on it and mustache, and the white like Hulkster headband. I mean, I still have it somewhere, but it looked like a mascot head, like in Shrek, they have the Lord Farquaad like mascot. going through the stanchions. That's it, on third grade me. That's what it looked like. It was this giant head, and I had red sweatpants on, and a Hulkamania shirt, and I had one of the foam finger Hogan fingers from back then. And so I was parading through all the classrooms, just pointing and just hulking out the whole way with this, just looking like I had a huge glandular problem.
Oh man. Yeah, like all the kids were into it then, but I don't know, what about you? Like for me, I kind of knew like junior high, high school, because then I can kind of gauge, whoa, I still like this quite a bit while other kids are growing out of it. You notice that too?
Yeah, well, yeah, I never grew out of it. I mean, I remember like even
that's what I'm saying. Like
sure, yeah,
the other kids grew out. Whoa, I'm not growing out of it. In fact, for me at least, I was becoming more intrigued with this,
Yeah, it was so ingrained. When I played football in high school,
yeah,
I used to paint my face. I had black around my eyes, and I had this character, the death dealer. And then we used to have to give these, pregame speeches to fire up the team. You would write this speech, and then the coach would pick, 4 or 5 and hand them back to you that okay, you're one of the guys. And I was always the last to go. And then I would always end it, with something wrestling related. It would, because I wore number 72, wrestling related as well, because growing up, I loved as always being a lineman that Refrigerator Perry got to carry the ball, and, would score from like the 2-yard line. And of course he was in the Battle Royal and WrestleMania 2.
Yeah.
So I always wore 72. So like my speeches would always end like something like, what you gonna do when number 72 and the Diablo crew kick the shit out of you? And the team would go crazy, or I would say, we're gonna make them rest in peace, and I'd have the black, the face paint and roll the eyes, and I mean, it was always there, no matter what I did.
And for whatever reason, I don't know why, like it was when you reference music or reference sports or reference TV. But for some reason, it was extra special when you would reference pro wrestling with a non-wrestling entity. And people to this day just dig it in a way that I can't explain, but there's something special about it. Like when you see on ESPN when like Ric Flair came into the dressing room and like these guys just went absolutely nuts versus any other celebrity. Like there's a fun connection. Or when if you listen to like guys like Joe Rogan and when they like mention Flair or some wrestling, like they just all get so jazzed in a way that you're just not going to get for sport, regular entertainment, regular music. Like something different about it.
Yeah, no, just larger than life personalities and just, this magnetic personalities, and everybody, I think, just about everybody has got some fond memory of growing up and seeing wrestling, or having at least one character that they really identified with or loved, because I'll meet people all the time and, I'll tell them what I do. And, oh my God, I used to love the Ultimate Warrior or somebody. There's always someone,
Exactly. And yeah, which is cool, and, or it's this, really? Huh. Or that's interesting. You don't hear that every day, like, really? Yeah, you hear the same, right? But so growing up, Todd, obviously growing up in arguably the greatest era of pro wrestling to grow up in ever, arguably. I mean, I know people like there are different eras, but come on, I mean, really. But I mean, think about it. We started WrestleMania 1, like our childhood was WrestleMania 1 all the way till now, so how can you argue that that's not, I'll say again, arguably the greatest era ever to grow up in pro wrestling? We're numerically starting WrestleMania. Come on now. But anyway, did you like growing up? So you were raised primarily Orange County, San Diego County. You didn't, Did you venture up to LA at all for WWF, or did you go to the San Diego Sports Arena when you were a kid, or which shows did you go see?
No, yeah, I went to LA. The first live show I ever went to was in '85, LA Sports Arena.
Oh wow, okay, wow,
And that was Hogan, Big John Stud
yeah.
in the main event, $15,000 body slam challenge, and Hogan body slammed him on the outside of the ring. And then Heenan said, it's got to be in the ring, dummy, and took the money and ran.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would go to shows primarily at LA. I remember seeing Jake the Snake and Steamboat main event at one of the shows I went to. I saw, Hogan and Savage during the post Mania 5. I saw Hogan and Boss Man.
That was
a lot of that. And then some shows at Anaheim Convention Center when they would run there every once in a while too.
Who did you go with? Did you go with all your family, or brother or dad, mom? Or
yeah, it all depends. I would go, my brother went to a couple of them. I remember that first show I went to in '85. Yeah, it was my mom and my brother and I. And like in between matches, they played the Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling theme just randomly, dun 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 dun. And I was, I like lost my voice. I was just yelling so loud, just at a song in between matches, But yeah, and then I would have, I met friends like in elementary school and stuff that were into it. So sometimes they would, we'd arrange it and we'd get dropped off, or one of the parents would go with us and hate themselves for a few hours. So we'd enjoy it. But yeah, I'd go with some friends and stuff. And then as I got older, even if I sat at WrestleMania 9 at Caesars, sat there by myself.
I don't know if I ever talked to you about that, man, because I was there. I don't
Really?
know. I don't remember us talking about that before. But okay, WrestleMania 9. Wow, how did you get out there?
Went with family. So and then they were, just stayed. But I mean, going to the show itself,
right. Wow. Do you remember where you were staying? That would be interesting. Do you remember what hotel you stayed at during that trip? I was at the Riviera staying at that trip.
Were you really?
Yeah,
you know what? I want to say we were staying at, gosh, what is it? What's the one that looked like a freaking riverboat back then? Oh my God, that's going to drive me crazy.
Wait a minute.
I can't remember it.
On the Strip?
Yeah, or maybe it might have even been Imperial Palace, to be honest with you. That might have been where we stayed. We might have stayed at IP. But I remember I hung out, I would hang out at Caesars like all day and just try and,
we were probably two teenagers probably crossed each other's paths that day and probably saw each other, man. So
yeah, no, for sure. I remember they did like an autograph signing in that Caesars mall.
Yeah.
Went to that.
Oh, so right. Yeah.
Still have a poster somewhere signed by like Scott Steiner, Taker, Paul Bearer, that were on hand. I remember Owen Hart, wasn't on the card, but he was just there with his family, like hanging out, and saw him coming and going a couple times. But
I remember seeing Virgil there, and I'm like, wait a minute, he wasn't there. Like, but so did you go to WrestleMania 2 or 7?
I went to 7. 2, I tried to get tickets and I think got in too late. So I went to the closed circuit, like big screen thing at Anaheim Convention Center, I think it was, and watched it on that.
Okay.
Went to 7.
Yeah.
And then 9, 12, 16. 12.
Yeah,
was a druid at 21.
Oh yeah, you were a druid, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because hey, look, man, we're gonna talk. Look, I Wrestling Society X, and you did TNA Impact, and so we definitely did some monumental things in our career, respectively. But again, we're talking about California, but man, that's great, because that was WrestleMania 21 in LA, Staples Center. And we'll get into that. But no, man, thanks for sharing all that. And you and your brother, USC football, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
He was a 4-year starter there, and went on and played in the league. He got drafted by the Giants. He played a couple seasons with the Niners. I think a season or two with the Seahawks. So he kind of, bounced around, and then played in the XFL, played for the LA Extreme, won the title.
Yeah.
They never got their rings.
Oh, or the parade.
Right. Yeah. But I'll tell you, man, those games were a lot of fun. I remember they played the Chicago Enforcers in a rainy day at the Coliseum, and it went to 4 overtimes or something. And it was one of the best. Tommy Maddox brought him back as one of the greatest games I've ever seen live.
And that was crazy because talking about XFL 1.0 and in LA, and I was there week 2, and it was Chicago at LA. And yeah, it was a crazy, double, triple overtime. And it was a great game that got totally shit on because it took over Saturday Night Live. And so that's when all the controversy started with NBC and XFL and Vince McMahon and wrestling and all this. But ironic, it was such a good game, but because it went long, it got shit on. And I think it got lost a little bit there, unfair to the players when they kind of dogged that league a little bit,
Agreed. Yeah. Well, we'll see. They're gonna take another run at it, with The Rock, and we'll see what happens.
I was bummed XFL 2.0 because I went to about 2 or 3 of the games at the Wildcats. I don't know if were you there. Did you check them out?
I never made it to one of those, unfortunately.
Yeah. Shout out to Danny Ramirez, referee. He and I went 2-3 times. 2, I think, maybe 2, definitely, maybe 3. But yeah, the season cut obviously, but I don't know if I'm as interested in it now. Are you as interested in it that Vince is not at the helm? Are you as interested? For some reason, I'm still interested, but not quite as interested.
Yeah, I always picture that the meme of Homer Simpson sitting on the couch with the XFL flag and the shirt and stuff. For me, probably not, but I'm interested because as a former football player, I just want more opportunity for guys to play and make money, and it was I don't know, I had seen American Underdog. I took my son to see it when it was in theaters, the whole Kurt Warner story.
Yeah. I saw that.
Yeah. And it detailed, how he played in the Arena League and showed some of that footage. And if there weren't outlets like that, maybe he never would have gotten another shot at the league, and he became a Super Bowl MVP. So you have to have those other outlets for guys to play football, because it's tough to make it into the league straight away. There's only so many spots, but guys, want to continue to play. They have a passion for the game. And so if the XFL can scratch that itch and do well and be a profitable company, then I'm all for it.
And like you said, it revitalized Tommy Maddox's career.
Yeah, and he hate me.
Right? Well, I see the NFL, and I see parallels. I see little things they took from and tweaked it from the XFL, remember when the offensive defensive line, and they have the little image of the players introducing themselves. That was originally done live on the field. But they tweaked it. The NFL tweaked it, and there's a lot of ideas. The
zip cam.
Yeah, and not only that, but not all stadiums, but home stadiums, when their team touchdowns, pyro goes off. That was the XFL, and also you notice a lot of the new stadiums. Not all of them, but a lot of new stadiums, the big jumbotron they have in the stadium is literally right behind the goalpost in some stadiums.
Yeah.
That was the Titantron that the XFL brought out for every game that they incorporated from wrestling, which I thought was cool. There were some crossover ideas I thought that were good. Some, of course, there weren't, but I see. And if I'm seeing that, I know Vince has got to be sitting there it's my idea. It's my idea, and little things, and they're never going to admit that that's where they got it from, the NFL.
Of course not.
And just like entertainment the way boxing or UFC, let's say, presents itself, they're never going to say if they got that from pro wrestling.
No, but I mean, you're right. Just the walkout music, some of the costuming and stuff that people wear, and just fighters having a gimmick basically, or a character, that is certainly borrowed heavily from wrestling. I mean, there's no question.
Yeah. And not only that, but just production, how the audience and the lighting and how it's shot, and how it's lit up. And a lot of that comes from wrestling, whether it's in boxing. Again, a lot of this came from, let's be fair, Dick Ebersol, because it really was, and I didn't really put two and two together till I got a little older, that, WrestleMania, and then it changed, the look of it changed, but really, like, a lot has to be thanked to Ebersol and Saturday Night's Main Event, because that was the first time that a wrestling arena with fans looked the way that we know now, how it's been looking on television for the last almost 40 years, right? And that is, they shot it like a television show. And then when NBC came in, they lit it up, and of course the rest is history. Well, Vince, now, okay, this is how they're lighting it up. Now we're going to do the same thing when we have television next week for superstars or all that. And it really makes a lot of sense now where that all started from in wrestling.
Yeah. And I mean, I just, growing up, I loved Saturday Night's Main Event. That was, just my favorite, because back then your weekend shows were a lot of squash matches and just building guys up, and you would get some big matches. But then you tune into Saturday Night's Main Event and you're seeing all the top stars taking each other on. The promos were so great. Just the whole presentation, the music, even the kind of sketch stuff that they would do. They would have a lot of fun. The Oktoberfest and the Uncle Elmer's wedding, and tracking down George the Animal Steel, and all these different, at the Detroit Zoo, and all these different things they would do.
Right.
Were so much fun. But you're right, because going to house shows as a kid, you'll recall you'd be sitting there, and all of a sudden the lights would go out, and there would be kind of the singular light hitting the ring. Everything else was dark. The bell would ring, and you're excited because it's starting, but the crowd was basically all blacked out.
Right. Right.
But yeah, Saturday Night's Main Event just was so vibrant.
Yeah.
And even like the promos with the silvery backdrop behind, Mean Gene doing his interviews and such. It just popped.
Well, I mean, look at the timeline. WrestleMania 1 happened. Then the first Saturday Night's Main Event happened later that year in '85, right? And and I think they mentioned this on one of the specials, but if you compare the first Saturday Night's Main Event and then you look at WrestleMania 1 and look at the crowd, it was like, whoa, big difference, right? So it would have been interesting had NBC not come along. I think WWF owes a lot to its growth to NBC, because now it looks like something mainstream. It looks like the NFL. It looks like Major League Baseball. It looks like, or let's say entertainment, an award show or something. Like, it looks like it belongs on television now in this modern era, because what wrestling was holding on to, like you said, you go to the sports arena, and I know exactly what you're talking about. It was that like almost fluorescent blue lighting underneath the scoreboard, and everything was dark. This doesn't look like WWF on TV,
Right.
And wrestling still looked great for television, but by 1950s, 60s, 70s standards, now it looked like it belonged on 80s television, cutting edge, where we're at now in time television. So if it didn't have that look, and it kind of held that same, I'm at the LA Sports Arena for a house show look to it, it may not have grown to the heights that it did. One little aspect like that, the presentation. Like you said, there was a lot of stuff going on in the rock and wrestling and all that, but the sustainability and the aesthetics for that person watching on their television, everything's connected to glue you in there. And I think the aesthetics, the lighting and all that is a big part of the success of wrestling and why it just boomed all of a sudden. Because wrestling had been around forever. And then, whoa, it was just big, just like that. It didn't go anywhere. It just became big. And you remember, like, when we were kids, our parents, grandparents, gosh, look at this pro wrestling. Like, I can't believe how big this is now. Like, this is, why, what happened, and all this stuff. And, like, this was never this popular back then. Like,
right.
This is unbelievable. They're as big as the NBA. Boy, go figure. Wow.
Yeah. And it was all that crossover, being on NBC, being on MTV, which was obviously going to be very colorful, when they had the war to settle the score and all that stuff. And you got, it's going to be colorful when you got Cyndi Lauper there and, and Danny DeVito and all the luminaries backstage. I mean, it was a cool place to be. Joe Piscopo, what a star. but and then it just, it took off. But yeah, and that's like the time that I really became a fan was 85 with that first run of Saturday Night's Main Event. And you're right, it was right after, later in the year after Mania, because I think it was Hogan, Bob Orton with, Mr. T and Piper out there. And so they were still continuing that, working towards the feud with T and Piper at WrestleMania 2, boxing and all that stuff. Yeah. So yeah.
Right. And then and you look at the progression and all about that production, man. And so and then of course, if you think about it, then the NWA/WCW, it was a couple years after Saturday Night's Main Event. Okay, now they're starting to look like this too now, like, so they're just taking ideas, but wrestling was lucky to get that television production people, a giant like NBC, in there to help them out. But they had such a great relationship, Vince and Dick Ebersol. They knew, Dick knew what he was good at. He wasn't going to step on Vince's toes. Vince knew what he was good at and wasn't going to step on Dick. They didn't, like, neither one wanted to take over. And I'm sure we can talk as we progress here. I've seen that working in television, pro wrestling. I've seen the TV people trying to come into our world and really do the product of pro wrestling a disservice at times. And I think it seems like they had a beautiful relationship. They knew exactly where their own boundaries were, but to help the other out at the same time,
Absolutely.
So Todd, getting back to you, one of Cali's finest, of course you are. And then speaking of that, how did you get in to the business? How did you get your feet in, and what was your first event that you announced?
So, after USC, I ended up down in the South Bay in Hermosa Beach, Redondo Beach area for a while, and became good friends with the Bell brothers. So Kris,
that's right.
Mark Smelly, who's now the meathead millionaire, and he's got all these, powerlifting, the slingshot for bench and all these powerlifting shoes and all these different products and podcasts. And the late great Mad Dog Mike Bell. And we became really good friends, and they were all working at UPW at the time. Mad Dog is like a trainer and wrestler. Mark was wrestling, and Kris was working in production. And we would always, we'd watch wrestling together on Monday nights, and we would talk wrestling, and like, man, you really know your stuff. And I was, communication and journalism major at SC and such. And I always wanted to get into, the dream would be to always become a broadcaster, and especially in wrestling. And so they're like, oh, you should get involved. Well, I think the first thing I started doing is I went and I basically begged to ring announce. They used to do these things called light shows in El Segundo. That's where their school ended up being. They were in Huntington Beach for a while. They ended up in El Segundo, and it was basically student shows, right? Their students would work shows. They could have their friends, family come just to watch, to have a crowd, whatever. And so I had asked Marty Rubalcaba, referee,
Marty.
Marty at the time, who was kind of overseeing those, hey, you know, can I ring announce? And showed up in a full suit with like a flame tie and, you know, and did it and just wanted to be involved. And then I remember one day I was up in LA and I got a call from,
By the way, when are we talking? Circa what year?
This is 99, 2000.
Okay. Yeah, man.
So I get a call one time from Mark Bell from Spelling. He's like, hey, you got to get down to the Galaxy Theater. Like, just get a suit and get down here. And what had happened was Doc Marley, who was calling play-by-play for UPW at the time, was sick or something and couldn't make the show. And this was at the time where UPW was a developmental territory. Yes. So WWE would put their talent on the shows, and they, you know, Jim Ross, Bruce Pritchard would come through and scout talent. Tom Pritchard would come through. Yeah. And so this was a big show. Yes. The Heavenly Bodies. And anyway, so I got, you know, it was like baptism by fire. I ended up calling this show that had Tommy Dreamer versus Samoa Joe on it. It had Victoria, who was just like getting signed at the time or had gotten signed and was going to TV, working Molly Holly. And then the main event was Edge and Christian against Frankie Kazarian and Nova. They were known as Evolution at the time. So that was the first. That was the first full show that I had called. I had gone one show previous. I think I called one match as like a tryout match, and that match was KG Sakota, again, God rest his soul, passed this last fall. Great guy, man, great guy, and Roadkill. So that was the first match I called just one match to get it on tape and try out. And then when that show came up and they needed somebody, I got the call, and, you know,
wow,
go with Joe Schmo, another one that's gone too soon.
Yeah, and
we've lost a lot.
Oh yeah. It's amazing when we go through the names, man. So man, dude. So I vaguely remember this talking to you. Like, you basically just got thrown in there. Like, hey, we need a guy. Go call a match. Dude, it is crazy. Again, the parallels, bro. Like, I was a ring announcer over Slammers and SCCW. And I remember Doc Marley was doing stuff for UIWA, which was kind of, we shared wrestlers with SCCW, UIWA. And I was just doing ring announcing. That's it. And when XPW started, it was like after the first show, like, oh, hey, Kloss, go in there and call the matches. And then, well, no, I'm the ring announcer. And Rob and Kevin like, oh, we'll get another ring announcer. Just go call the matches. Huh? Like, wait, what? Okay, I'm the play-by-play guy now. Okay, you know, it's crazy, man. It's crazy, the parallels right there. But I don't know about you, dude, but I don't not like I cringe with those early matches that I called, man. To this day. Oh yeah.
No, it's bad because I remember just like to practice, I would watch matches and put them on mute, and like I had a tape recorder.
That's it.
And so I would call it and record it to like then watch it back and play it back.
Yeah.
And so I was calling it solo. So like my early matches, if you listen, it just sounds like me doing a bad Joey Styles impression.
Same here, dude. Same here.
Because he's kind of the guy I learned to call solo from, you know, because he used to call a lot of those ECW shows, he would call solo. So,
right.
I was just, you know, I was like up here all the time and didn't know how to kind of flow with the action yet. But yeah, I don't like going back and listening. I think they actually before Peacock took it over, like when they were doing those hidden gems, that match with Edge and Christian and Kazarian and Nova was one of the ones that they threw on there. And I think Dreamer and Joe too. And it's like, oh, I'm on the network, but I'm on the network. You know?
I know, man. Like I remember them when they were like, somebody would do a story, let's say on XPW, and they would just take some footage and play it. Oh, please be the later footage. Like, no, don't take that crap from the early days, dude. But but
give me a couple of those classic Kloss screams anytime.
well, yeah, okay, fine. Yeah, well, but the thing, I mean, I'm talking, you know what I mean, like actually flowing with
Yes.
the match, and I think that was at the time. And tell me if you can relate to this. The change up from, okay, that this is not me now anymore. This is a character I'm playing. This Todd Keneley, the announcer, is not who I am in real life, right? So were you, as time went on, did you kind of understand that separation as time went on more and more? You know what I'm saying?
I think so, but the line was really blurry with me because
Right.
the way I saw it, and I think the way I kind of called it was, okay, I'm former USC football player, Todd Keneley. So yes, I'm not a pro wrestler, nor was I. Trained here or there a little bit, but like I was an athlete. So I tried to bring that mentality into it and
Okay,
just,
right. Yeah.
like you'll see nowadays. So, I mean, pretty much just about any former athlete tries to go into broadcasting, but it's
Right.
still them. So
Mhm.
I don't think that I necessarily ever became so much like just a different pro wrestling personality as maybe just an extension. I think if anything, I became a product of what I grew up listening to.
Yeah,
Like if I
right.
go back and listen, uh, Gorilla was always my favorite growing up.
Mhm.
And I'll listen back to matches that I call, and I will randomly just say, if a guy hits a brainbuster, I'll just say Brainbuster City. Like I'll just randomly put city behind a move. And it's like, oh, Gorilla. Like there's so many times it's a title match, and I'll always say, oh, golden opportunity for that guy. All these things that Gorilla said. And a lot of times without even like thinking about it. But then sometimes I'll go back and like watch old WWF matches and listen to Gorilla. And I'm like, oh my God, I say that all the time.
Right.
It's just like ingrained. I'm
Yes.
not like trying to copy Gorilla Monsoon. It just comes out,
100%. 100%. That's great too, because that now you're right. How can you separate that person when honestly it's the people that we became because of our experience as kids growing up loving this stuff, man. And that's a great thing too. I feel like that love that we had, that little Kris and little Todd that loved wrestling, that kid can never go away. We need that kid to still like remind us why we love this so much, and why it's cool, why it's special, and in turn helps us just put that over. And then is that's what we're doing.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think with you and I, we didn't have to like fabricate
Right.
excitement
Yeah.
or knowledge because we're not somebody that came from a different medium that then had to become, a wrestling announcer. We grew up watching it. We grew up loving it. We grew up with a sense of how the timing works and how the cadence works. So although we didn't maybe display it in our early days as much, we
Well, yeah.
got there probably quicker than most would because,
Right.
and at the end of the day, yeah, sometimes, you're going to spike for a big move or something, but like, I found that I legitimately was excited at that time. So yeah, there might be a little bit of extra emphasis, but for the most part, I'm generally up because I'm excited seeing it,
I guess
I am a fan first and foremost.
right. I guess the part that when I say it's not Todd Keneley, the announcer, is not Todd Keneley, the real person. For example, if you're announcing a match and it's all this complete cheeseball stuff, like a voodoo spell has been put on this person, and you're literally selling it like you're talking as if this is a real event that's happening right now, right? So I guess what I'm saying is people that, let's say, don't really know much about wrestling, and then they see me doing that and I'm using my real name, I have to kind of explain to them, like, that's a different person than who you're talking to right now. Like you said, the line's blurred, but it's not totally the same person. And then, I don't know, I guess later in my career, when I kind of honed that concept, it almost gave me freedom to even be more outlandish and play with this stuff even more. Like, for example, today, I find it generally, this is a generalization, like people, kayfabe being dead or saying it gone away. And so many people I see in the business want to not look like a fool and want to look like, well, I know that what this really is. I know that this is, for lack of a better word, fake. I know that. So I'm not going to look stupid, and I'm going to be up here announcing it, kind of winking at you the whole time. Whereas I come from the school, it's got to be the total opposite of that. No matter how silly this looks, we're still calling it like it's really happening. You know what I mean? There's no winking at the audience, for as far as I'm concerned. That's the wrestling I love, and that it could still work, I think.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And you're in on the act, but I find that I get caught up in it and suspend disbelief. And when I'm calling it, I mean, I'm legitimately calling it as real sport.
Wow.
And and when I'm doing it, I don't feel like I'm full of shit. I feel like I'm telling the truth and I'm saying it like a real sport, because in my mind it is.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It makes perfect.
Yes, I'm fully aware of what's going on, but at that moment, so I see what you're saying. But yeah.
I guess I get everything you're saying, and I trust you do that. I am, but I guess it's a nice opportunity to talk to you, and us talk that have done basically the exact same thing, and share this with the audience that is very hard to get to understand unless you've experienced it yourself.
Yeah, and let me ask you this, because I'm sure you've called some marathon tapings, in your day, and a lot of content and live events, pay-per-views and such. So I think what people take for granted is, yes, we're not in the ring and flying around and taking bumps, but those guys are going out there and working anywhere from 5 minutes to say 25 minutes, right? We're working the entire show. And what I think people take for granted is just, I don't sit there and write out lines. I mean, I call it off the cuff. Obviously, we both have our little quips and our crutches and our lines that we just go to, when a certain situation happens, it just kind of triggers, right? And you kind of have your menu that you're picking from of the way you color in those brush strokes of what's happening. Mm-hmm. But your brain is just constantly turning and processing what you're seeing.
Right.
You can't just sit there and call moves, because obviously the fans can see what moves are going on in the action. So you have to tell story. You have to bring in character. You have to bring in strategy and why somebody has an advantage and this and that, and do it and present it in an entertaining manner, all the while not stepping on the toes of the ring announcer during entrances, not stepping on the toes of whoever you're calling it with.
Right.
If you're going to a break, getting out to break on time and not being the micro machine man at the end to get your last word in before you go to break. There's so much going on that, I mean, I find you get you have that adrenaline, right? So right afterwards you still have it, but then it's an adrenaline dump because it really does. It's exhausting, isn't it?
Yeah. Right. It's amazing. And you basically summed it up. Someone actually came up to me recently, and I did a 4.5-hour pay-per-view. And that was, I think, the first time someone that was not an announcer at the show said, "Holy shit, you did the whole show?" And it's like, well, yeah, I always do the whole show. But again, it was one of those things where it's funny you bring that up now, because I don't ever remember anybody. You get, like you said, nothing to take away from the wrestlers or anything, but yeah, we're there the whole show. And it's crazy. Like everything you said, like how to steer it, right? And that's basically what we're doing. We're steering the storytelling, but you also have to, you have to be an actor, man. You have to be emotionally charged, sad, happy, angry at the appropriate time. And you have to come across like you're really angry, acting, you're really sad. And,
Yes.
yeah. And if it comes off at a time when it doesn't make sense to say it, oh, dude, that can throw the whole thing off to where a wrestling fan may not like that show he just saw, but he kind of doesn't know why he doesn't like it. But it could be something simple that we missed or we did wrong or something. And that's where I take pride in doing it as best as I can possibly do it for that product. Because at the end of the day, you're putting those guys over. In turn, all it does is just puts you over, right? Now, there are some announcers that, like you said, they want to get all their stuff out. And the more you do that, and the more you obviously are talking about you, the more you just suck as an announcer, a wrestling announcer.
Yeah. No, you have to serve the product. You basically have to be a tour guide to the viewer in who these guys are, why they're, engaged in this battle, why it's important, why the stakes are high, what personal issues they have, what brought them to this point.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's theater in that respect. And then just, little things that you learn over time, like, you learn to stay away from pronouns. Like, that's something I never thought about when I first started. They say, oh, and he hit him with this. No, who hit him with this? You have to say the talent's name.
Yeah.
And that takes some getting used to. And that's something I still mess up, a lot. But like calling every pin attempt or every submission attempt, because the match could theoretically end right there. Even if it's just a simple, transition roll up or whatever. I mean, you can't just, that's what I was always told is, you can't just glance over that, or then it's obvious that it's not going to end there. So if this is a real fight and somebody goes for a pin, it could very much end there. So you have to learn too, to like, you might be in the middle of a really good comment and you have to be able to stop down, or if somebody else is talking and they don't take it, you have to take it from them, call the pin and get back to them. And like you said, it's just, you're steering the ship. It's a, you've got your dance partners in the ring and in the commentary booth.
Oh man. And I will tell you, man, I'm sure I could speak for you too. Like, so thankful and such a joy, like all the stuff that I've done and you've done so much too, like so thankful, like, and it's just so fun. So fun.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I take nothing back. And I mean, like, again, I obviously I don't want to be done with this journey yet. And I think I've got a lot left in the tank, and obviously people can stay in our line of work till they're, advanced years. But I mean, if you like, I've told this to you before, but like, if you take a step back and you told either one of us at, 7, 8 years old, when we first became such big fans, that, you're going to call, live pay-per-views and like, you're going to call matches with Roddy Piper, and for me, like, you're going to get to call a Hogan Ric Flair match, stuff like that. Like, never in a million years would have believed it. And I would have been the happiest person on earth. So you got to appreciate the victories along the way, but I am a big believer in both of our talents and both of our just passions, because we don't, manufacture it. We love professional wrestling. And I hope that, we finally land kind of that longevity and contract that allow us to do what we want to do on a grand stage for a long time.
That's right, man. And at the same time, being thankful for what we have done. Now, going back to this, so the parallels now. Okay, so XPW, UPW. So you got UPW, you got the Farm League for WWF. A couple times guys left XPW, like a Damian Steele, because, hey, look, I got to go over here because there's interest in me right now. Okay, then I was the play-by-play guy. Okay, so you're UPW, here I'm XPW. we got Rob Black, we got all this funding, we got all this money, we're going to the sports arena, the Olympic, I mean, it's a television, all this stuff. So it was very interesting. You, myself, were each the host of this, but we didn't cross paths personally back then. I didn't really know you. You didn't know me yet, you know?
Yeah.
And it was a weird time to where, like, you know, the politics of wrestling, if there was an event, all the UPW guys and XPW guys were out, we'd probably be enemies, you know?
Right.
Yeah. And so that was that. Now, the aftermath of XPW and UPW, you and I were kind of doing our own thing, and we both ended up working with NWA through Dave Marquez and all that, and then because he was kind of positioned through Big Vision Entertainment with Kevin Kleinrock, and so I was kind of in that group, and then you and I finally got to work together. Now, we never met before we worked together.
No, we never had. I mean, I knew, you know, of you.
Me too.
Certainly,
right.
but yeah, we had never met, and then it was like, you know, when we did, it was like we were, you know, long lost best friends or brothers or something, because again, our path like mirrored each other so much in our fandom, and then how we broke in and how we came up. So, and then, you know, I think a lot of people probably would have thought in putting us together, well, how's this going to work? Because you got two kind of leads, but I mean, we made it work, and it was always just so much fun.
It was so much fun. And then you and I got the call. And I remember we did this at Big Vision Entertainment, but it was a big deal at the time when the Ultimate Warrior and Orlando Jordan were in Spain. Remember that big event? And then we ended up doing the English broadcast for that. You and myself. That something happened though. I think this was right before the big crash of 2008, and it materialized, but not to how they wanted it to. But that was a huge one right there.
It was a lot of fun to call. And then I remember they had that entrance, right? It had like a whole story behind it, that it was supposed to give them power when it was made of some sort of alien crystal or something. And it was called the Power Box. And I remember you did like the promos for it, and you're like, the Power Box. But yeah, it was a trip calling those matches together, and it was a good time. But yeah, I wish that would have materialized into something, you know, big. I don't know if it ever aired out there or what happened to it, but like, ironically, the same exact thing happened to me in going to Australia, because I called that Hulkamania tour, which was a blast, and you know, and that had Hogan and Flair in the main event, and you know, Brutus Beefcake was on it, Rikishi and all those guys, the Nasty Boys and Gangrel, and it was, you know, Eki Fatu, Umaga's last match with Mr. Anderson, which was a great match. And so, you know, I mean, I think we had around 10,000 people in Sydney, something like that, and shot it. And they kind of did a revolving door of different talents coming in to sit in on color, but Bischoff called the Flair match, the Hogan Flair match with me. And then there was squabbling over rights or money or whatever. And it never aired. So I called a Hogan Flair match with Eric Bischoff, and to this day, I've never gotten to see it or hear it. It drives me nuts.
You know, it's like so
what it is.
So close, but so far, and so many opportunities. Like, you brought up Roddy Piper, and we were doing that, the pilot for the Classic Wrestling Revolution, and we used Marquez's NWA Point Wainimi, and you were there. You were calling the show, and I didn't really know what was going on. I was just so focused on what we were doing, the whole thing with Piper. And I saw you saw me, like, oh, you're doing this, and then you see me. I remember I didn't get a chance to tell you what was going on, and you just see Piper and me sit down and wait, like, what the hell's going on, Kloss? Like, what is this? What are you doing? I'm like, dude, I don't know. It's just all starting, but dude, I'll tell you later. You know, and Yeah, that was so unfortunate because that was the last thing he ever did in wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, what was it, like 2 weeks later, right?
Yeah,
Something like that he passed. I think it was soon after.
yeah,
Um,
2.5, 3 weeks, something like that. I was actually in Europe. Dude, we shot the pilot. I had a family vacation in Europe, and we were going to come back and continue. I'm serious. I'm in Italy, Florence, Italy, and this worldwide CNN news. I thought, like, this is not real, dude. Like, I'm dreaming. This is a nightmare. And I'm dreaming this guy. I got to know his family already. I got to know his wife, his kids, and how passionate he was going to be. And his son Colt was going to be one of the stars and all that. So, man, yeah, I just such a mixed bag of emotions. From a selfish standpoint, it was I was going to get to work with him, but then realistically, it's like, this is sad. This guy, he's too young and. Just crazy, man. But
yeah,
I would. Yeah,
I remember that day because we were doing in the midst of our normal championship wrestling from Hollywood taping, and then you and Hot Rod came out, and I got up and I went to the back to production because I wanted to listen to you guys and watch from back there. My son Jack was at the taping.
Yeah.
So I go backstage. And I look on the monitor, and there's Jack standing next to Piper, and Piper's just like patting him on the head and mussing his hair, and like, "Hey, champ," I'm like, "What is happening?" Whatever, Jack. But yeah, no, and it was, and I was happy for you, and it was so sad because Roddy looked great that day.
Great.
I know he had battled cancer and everything, and had overcome it, but I mean, like, you remember like when he was tag champs with Flair during that time, he, was heavy and stuff. He, at that taping that you guys worked together, I remember just thinking to myself, God, Roddy looks great. I'm so happy. He looks so great. And then, of course.
Yeah, no, I that's the first thing that came to my mind when I found out that he passed. The first thing is like, wait a minute, no, he looked awesome. He sounded awesome. What? No, it doesn't make sense. The first thing, and yeah, 100%, man. But again, I mean, it is such a tragedy and such a crazy how it's something like that. It can be so tragic, yet so wonderful and memorable that you got that opportunity with somebody like that. I mean, very thankful to work with guys like him, guys like Terry Funk, Sabu, like so many guys, the late great Tracy Smothers. Remember working with him, like so knowledgeable and wanting to help announcer. Hey, you're going to go out there, your face. Okay, I'm heel. So if you're an announcer, this is what you should say. Da, da, da. Like he was even looking out for the announcers, right? And it's just the best, dude. Looking back at these minds that we got to work with, and these icons, unbelievable.
Yeah, no question about it.
It was all right there in Point Hueneme, California, and so okay, Todd. So no, thanks for sharing that too. Interesting. If we could get some pictures, if you have, I'd like to, whatever you have of like you, Hogan, Flair, anything in that time frame. I'd love to see it if you have any. That we can put up here. But then going there, we did some stuff in the NWA. Then I went off and did Wrestling Society X, kind of got the little mainstream exposure there. And then you went off and you had a stint in NWA TNA for the moment. So yeah. It's a weird of you look at our careers, like, they kind of, in their own unique way, parallel the other. It's just kind of strange. It's kind of cool, though,
No, it was cool. It was cool that we both got that opportunity,
Yeah.
I mean, and I thought, I thought Wrestling Society X was so entertaining. And then, it heard that, it was going to go on and get, additional seasons and everything else. And so, and for me, went into Impact at what I thought was going to be a great time because the roster was stacked. I mean, AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, Kurt Angle, Jeff Hardy, Austin Aries, Bobby Roode. I mean, just all these just incredible talents. And, it was during the Hogan Bischoff time. But for me, that was good because they helped usher me in there. I know people have their opinions at that time, but it felt big. It was a blast calling it at the Impact Zone. And then we went on the road and
it's very interesting because you were there, you got in there and you were doing a great job, by the way, not just saying this. And you I tried to be unbiased because we'd already worked together in Cali and all that. And we became good friends. And I was really like, all right, let me listen to this with not, friendship ears here, and I felt that you brought an old school element back to it without being too old school, if that makes any sense, right? To maybe, let's say, the fan's mind that doesn't want to hear old school, but you're presenting it in a way that the critic isn't gonna, hey, I don't want the old school. Like I thought you did a very good job of making it, throwing it back, but not dissing the fans of today. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was a good balance, and I like that a lot, man. And that's at least my perception of it. But so you did a great job, man. So you're in there, and I didn't want you to not finish your thought right now, but I want this to tie into kind of our experience with television now, because we've had the local tapings and all that, and even UPW and XPW, it was very independent. But now you're working for Spike TV. I was working for MTV, right? So it's a whole different ball game now. And if you want to finish your thought before, but going at it, I just want to talk about what was your experience in being from Hollywood, being from California, LA, but seeing it now from, now I'm seeing big time television's involvement in pro wrestling and how that was different to you and the pros and cons in your opinion.
Yeah, I think the point, and I was taking a while to get there, but my point was, I was taking too long to get there. My point was that I think kind of our time at that level for both of us was cut short for reasons beyond our control. And I really think in both of our cases, it had absolutely nothing to do with our effort or, our quality of work.
Right. And I agree with you too, for sure. Absolutely. 100%.
But yeah, I had a little bit of a taste of kind of that level of TV because ironically, before I got like a kind of a big opportunity in wrestling at that level, I got opportunity in MMA, ironically enough, after calling the Valor Fighting stuff, which also was done through Big Vision.
Yeah, we did.
And we actually called some stuff together, which has got to be hilarious because we were. I was already wrestling announcer trying to pretend to be an MMA announcer. I barely knew anything, but knew just enough to be dangerous. And you knew even less, but would make it up with your enthusiasm. And so, yeah, if you talk about going back and cringing, I bet if we go back and listen to that, it'll just sound completely ridiculous.
Right.
But so out of that, somehow I got an opportunity with Elite XC when that was a thing, when they were on Showtime and CBS, and I was calling their undercard fights. So I remember our first show was, I think, Tupelo, Mississippi, and there wasn't a King of the Road match. But I was working with like Guy Mesker, and that was like the Showtime sports production team. Yeah. And it was live. So, I mean, I got kind of a taste and thankfully so, because then it wasn't. So there I had to deal with somebody in my ear and calling for replays and, okay, now we're going to get you guys on camera. And so it wasn't as much a shock to the system for me, like going, for instance, to Impact, because I at least had some like big live event experience.
I guess did you notice again, yeah, same. I mean, XPW was always recorded for home video and television. But then when you jump to something like Viacom, MTV and all that, like when you got there, did you have any experience with these TV people are coming in and trying to mess with pro wrestling, or think they can present pro wrestling without a pro wrestling mind? Because we experienced that was the biggest teeth grinding feeling of being there and talking to all the network people and execs when they wanted to throw their 2 cents in, but you felt like at the end of this conversation, okay, they're going to want to come back to them and they're going to want to be the one calling the shots. And you just, as a wrestling mind, you knew that this is not going to work, and they don't know what they're doing. They think this is much simpler than it is, or that they get it. You know what I mean? Overnight.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't necessarily experience that in Impact because it was very much wrestling people there. I mean, like Keith Mitchell, who directs AEW now, was directing Impact, and I'd maybe have him in my ear to like count me into stuff. Sometimes Bruce Pritchard, but they didn't really like overly produce us at all. But the one thing that would kind of get in the way is like when I was there, Bellator came up and was launching on Spike.
Right. That's it. Yeah.
And so I would look at my format and it was like, Bellator spot, Bellator. So I had to cover Bellator almost more than I had to cover the match that I was calling, and had to put it over so much that it just completely threw off my cadence of calling a match. Like, oh, okay, get that Bellator mention in. And it's like, oh my God, I get it, So there was that. And then I did like a couple episodes of Passions on NBC, like the soap opera, when they did this wrestling, match was going on and all this. And so that was one where it was like reading what my lines were. I was like a ring announcer in it and commentator, so I really had to like stretch right for that role. But like just the way the lines were written is nothing like I would say as an announcer in wrestling. It was like written so lame, and it like somebody had never seen wrestling before.
Yes.
So there's that. And luckily they let me like rework it. And then same when I did Hulk Hogan's Celebrity Championship Wrestling, that there were TV people too that like just didn't get it sometimes.
No, didn't get it. And it's almost like inevitable if you're a wrestling show entity, whatever, and you go into television, it's every single time, one, they're not going to know anything. Two, because they are so much above this lowbrow pro wrestling, then I naturally am going to get how they run things, is the mentality with a lot of people that don't know wrestling. And generally people kind of, oh, wrestling, that's that thing down there that only kids like, and so they think therefore that they get it. And at times they I don't know, like it's almost like they don't want to respect somebody with the wrestling mind, because now they have to admit that they're not better than wrestling anymore, Not everybody, but I ran into that from time to time. And it's kind of like going back to the Dick Ebersol, Vince McMahon thing. They had mutual respect for one another. And interestingly enough, Todd, you talked about something that you experienced in your career that Jesse the Body Ventura did, which was, remember Jesse Ventura, the Saturday Night's Main Event, they had the whole script written out for him, the whole match. And Jesse Ventura's like, you got to be shitting me.
Yeah.
The whole match, like, and Dick Ebersol, what do you mean? And Jesse says, like, dude, tell me who's going over. Tell me who's the face and heel. Tell me where you're going with it. Like, are you really going to write for me? And then that's when Ebersol said, throw out the script. Do what you want.
I ain't no Johnny come lately on the block.
Yeah.
I don't need the writers helping me here, helping me there.
Yeah, he probably, I could see him now. Like, he's another great one who, like, how do you blur? Like, even with Governor, like, I'm still watching Jesse the Body Ventura here when he's talking politics. Like, so I'm sure there was a lot of that. But again, that just very interesting television's like can be this. It's like W Wrestling Society X. Like MTV was a saving grace, but it was also the death of us. It's crazy,
Yeah.
man. It's
Yeah, and then like when it comes to broadcasters, because I know you and I have both been flown out to Stanford and auditioned for WWE and stuff, and it's still strange to me that coming from a wrestling announcing background is almost like a mark against you. It seems like, in going there, and obviously there's independent wrestlers that get signed up and get picked up there, but obviously now they're focusing a lot on just athletes of all different realms and trying to just mold them into performers and wrestlers. But I always found it so interesting that you take somebody that has a passion for it and has experience in calling it, and they kind of, people like you and I, seem to be low on the totem pole of people that are going to get opportunities. Now there's exceptions to the rule. Guys like Vic Joseph, I think Vic, came up through wrestling, was a wrestling fan, and he's there. But, you take people like a Jimmy Smith now that called Combat Sports and forever, called Bellator, and you make him the lead broadcaster on Raw. And there's a learning curve in knowing the characters and knowing, to this day, like he does a good job, don't get me wrong, but there's still a lot of like signature stuff that he doesn't call or that he doesn't know. And that's where you have, other guys will pick up the slack or, when you take a guy again, that's a great studio anchor and announcer and Major League Baseball guy like Adnan Virk and try and make him a wrestling announcer, or you take Mike Adamle back in the day and trying to make him a wrestling announcer. And these guys are great broadcasters in their own right, but it's just a different animal calling this. And so I always, I'm interested in your thoughts. Or now, sorry, I don't mean to turn into the interviewer again here, but it's a volley back and forth.
Yeah.
Did that kind of, eat away at you the way it has me over the years, that it's just, almost seems a slap in the face that coming up and actually working in the industry is almost like a negative thing?
I try my hardest, Todd, to again be thankful for what I've done and where I'm at and the people I've met. And I try to live with the philosophy that that life often gives you its greatest gifts cleverly disguised as its worst nightmare. So if that makes sense, and maybe there's some reason this is happening where, like you said, like this is bizarro world. What? I do something and then I mark against me. But I know also what you're saying and the frustration. And yeah, I'm not going to lie. Of course, it's ridiculous. Like, I think it's ridiculous that because I've never been explained well enough why that's the reason, or I never got a good enough explanation. And they do whatever they want. That's fine. And it's not just us. It's guys. It's other guys, that wrestlers, referees, whatever, But yeah, it's hard to accept that and even understand why that is. And even if you get the explanation, okay, but I'm not buying it, and again, I think you're right. I think the product will benefit from somebody with experience. The product will suffer usually with someone with a lack of experience. So yeah, man, I try again to look at like there might be something waiting on the other side, a gift that just kind of seems like, shit at the moment. But I try to just live by that, go one day at a time, and hey, appreciate this event that I'm working or that event that I'm working. And I always prided myself, Todd, on, I don't care if I'm announcing for MTV or XPW, millions of homes, or if I'm doing a show and there's 10 people in the audience and it's not even on TV, it's just me on the live mic, that I'm always going to do that same job. And I feel good. I'm not trying to prove anything to anybody else. It's really just to myself. I want to prove to myself, like, I want to do this because I love to do it. You know, I never want to, and I tell kids growing up, and kids that get into wrestling now, that you can kind of tell they're not really into it because they like wrestling. They're just, okay, they get the spotlight, you know? And I was just like, you can't do that. You cannot do that. There's no sustainability, no longevity, and you're eventually kind of going to go crazy in a way. You know, it's you're going to drive yourself insane to the point where, like, what am I doing here? You know, so I enjoy what I'm doing, and I think that kind of helps ease what you're talking about right now, which is, that is frustrating, and it has been in the past, thinking about that. Like, wow, my experience went against me. Like, okay, now the world doesn't make sense, you know.
Yeah. Well, and I think, you know, one of the things that kind of got the monkey off my back when it came to that is because the last time I went out to WWE, it was John Gaburek that like produced and oversaw my audition. And I called 3 matches, I think, with Joey Styles, 3 or 4, whatever it was. And afterwards, he kind of echoed that because he's like, and I had done some like on camera, like stand-ups too, and was like super nervous. Don't know why. It's because everything you know, I've called how many events? You've called how many events? But there's something about being in that studio when the red light goes on and everything you've always dreamed of is on the line, right? But I settled in when it came to calling matches, and Big even said the same thing after the fact. He's like, "How do you think you did?" And I'm like, "Oh, you know, stand-ups obviously could have been better. I was pretty happy with the commentary." And he's like, "You don't understand how many just sportscasters and different news guys and all these people that come in, and all they do is just say what's happening on the screen, and they don't get the story, and they don't get how to change their energy with what's going on in the match. And you get that." And he said, you know, he said something like, "So what you were able to do on commentary was," I think he said, like, "stupendous or phenomenal," something like that.
Yeah, man.
And so did I get the job? No. But to me, that was like validation, you know, of like, okay, at least he gets it, that there's certain people that you can't just turn into announcers for this type of medium. And, you know, he gave me credit for being able to do it at that level. And so, so that, like you said, you know, being thankful for just kind of the small victories along the way. And that was one that I was like, okay. And then it was after that I got to go do Australia and ended up at Impact at some point. And, you know, that continued to kind of just feel like validation.
No, man, he's right, man. You are a true talent, man. And I think of anybody that I've announced with in the past, I usually have good chemistry, you know, and partner's got to be there too. But you had the entertainment factor, but you just had that I get it factor. No explanation was needed for you. You know what I mean? Which is, again, why we kind of had those same moments of sense of humor and all that. I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. And that really resonates when I hear you call a match, and a very professional too. And you add to that the professionalism of a sports broadcaster. He's right, man. Like, yeah, I could see him now being blown away by your performance.
Yeah. And for you, like for me, watching you work, it was always that fun factor and energy. And so, like, I growing up, I think there were 2 people that I really enjoyed, you know, Gorilla, of course, and the heel commentators. I loved, you know, Jesse and Bobby, you know, and stuff. But we talked about our affinity for Saturday night's main event. I'll be damned if I didn't love some Vince on play.
Oh, yeah, dude.
You know, and, you know, Champion Hogan is really put together, Jesse. You know, like, and so you always, to me, brought that sense of just fun and
thank you.
And that, you know, so I think we made a good team because kind of those 2 things combined.
Yeah, we kind of both knew where the other was going, and we knew where the other was going. So boom, no explanation needed. Again, like no one needed to explain any of this to either one of us. Even us together, we didn't. You and I didn't have to talk about it at all. Push it, bump. There we go. Yeah, it's like riding a bike or something. It's really, it's again, these are the moments that I tell young guys that, they're upset they didn't, you gotta love what you do and really just enjoy the ride, man. Not give up on your dreams, of course, but while you're doing that, you gotta, because you're gonna look back, man. You know what? That was actually pretty freaking awesome. Why was I wrapped up in other crap, and vanity or whatever it is, wanting to get the spotlight? Everything you're saying right now is just like, it's a reminder for all of us in this business to like just remember why we're here. We're here because we loved it when we were kids. That is the only reason we're here. It's really the only reason. Those of us that are in it because they really are in it for the wrestling part of it, not looking for, I don't know if you remember, like back when I was in high school, in the new generation era, wrestling was kind of died out. And then all of a sudden the Attitude Era came around, and there's a ton of bandwagon fans, and you see that in wrestling too. When wrestling got hot, you started to see people kind of coming in that, all right, they don't really like wrestling, just wrestling's popular right now. And I can't emphasize that enough, man. You got to be in it and remember the love you had for it,
No doubt. Yeah.
Well, brother, I'm going to ask a couple more questions, buddy, and I'll let you go. But, dude, thank you. This has been really awesome, Todd, man. It's great catching up with you, number one. And for me, this is an awesome conversation. I appreciate it, man. And thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, man. And then do you have any and by the way, really quick, you've worked lucha shows before. And really quick, can you is there like a major difference for you in a lucha show, and do you change anything up yourself to fit that, or is it kind of just you treat it like you just normally would anything else?
I think in calling lucha, I generally shift to calling more action and just moves because it's so fast paced.
Yes.
And then, try and emphasize the colorful characters and a Technico versus a Rudo and this and that, you know what I mean? But I find myself, it's the commentary becomes way more fast paced because the action's way more fast paced. And I think I don't know about you, but I think I tend to just stick to calling the action more than the normal storytelling thread that I would do in a normal match.
True. It's kind of a fallback when let's say you're not familiar with the product, you can just kind of fall back on what's going on in the ring,
Yeah. And I would always try and do my research, but I remember, Kevin Kleinrock would have these some of these Viva La Lucha, shows, and there'd be times where it's like a 10-man tag, and everybody's got a mask on.
I know, man.
I'm trying to just keep track of who's who, and
I remember like 4-on-4, and it's like you said, and I remember like all their names, blue, yellow, silver, green, just the colors matching the name.
Yeah. All right, that's that guy. Yeah. But yeah, it was fun. I remember I called a few with Smiley, with Ryan Katz, GQ Money, and we were both just like, all right, man, we're gonna do the best we can with this.
Yeah,
but it was fun.
That's a lot of responsibility that we have on our shoulders every show.
Yeah.
Did you ever? You're a big guy. Played football. Did you ever want to wrestle?
Yeah, I did. And Bassman for a minute had his school was down my way. It was across from Saddleback College in South Orange County. And I went in there. Reggie Bennett, who was a female performer, wrestled in Japan, and she was training, and Tom Howard then came in shortly thereafter. And so I went in with a couple of my football player buddies and, learned how to bump and learned how to lock up and learned some of the basics and ran the ropes and, started. But then it was right around that time that I had the opportunity to go on and play football at USC. And so I didn't want to risk getting hurt and messing up that opportunity to get a scholarship at SC and get a SC degree. And so then I just never really went back to it. Shifted more towards the broadcast style, or side of it. But, I've since then have taken a couple choke slams and a trash can over the head. I mixed it up a few times.
Did you ever, as an announcer, Todd, I just throw this out there, did you ever had to gig or blade?
I never did. No, it was suggested. Joe Schmo wanted to do a storyline and to get James Main Event Morgan over, more as a heel and play off of my football background that, James Morgan was going to take, he was going to be upset at some of the stuff I was saying on commentary and try and rough me up and slap me around. And that was going to kind of bring out the competitor in me. And they're going to have me, wear my, SC colors and stuff and build up to a match. And then basically just have me get my ass handed to me and busted open and a bloody mess, and to lead to whatever the feud was going to be, if it was Adam Pearce or whoever. And Joe Schmo was like, oh no, but you're believable because you played at USC and this will be, you'll get him over, and how dare he do this to good old TK. And then it just never ended up like materializing, but it was discussed.
Were you going to be game?
I probably would have if, I was apprehensive for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm like, is this really, does anybody really need to see this? And is this really necessary, on this level? But if I thought that it was really going to be good for the product and it was going to, help elevate him as a top heel, then and I would have played along, and I would have had faith in working with James, too. But it just, it was one of those kind of, I think, harebrained Schmo ideas that Marquez probably shot down immediately when Schmo pitched it to him. But Schmo called me and, pitched me on it, and I was like, all right, maybe. Yeah, this never happened. How about you?
Well, I mean, I wanted to ask you that because as an announcer, it did happen once and never again since. And it was during XPW TV. It was me and Larry was gone, so Wantastico, and the wraparounds we would do in the studio between matches, and all that. And during the time, Crimson, this guy would come. Who is this guy? Come into the ring and he would attack a random guy with a box cutter and then just leave. And then 3 weeks later, attack another guy. Just who is this guy? We don't know. Wow, this guy can pop up just about anywhere. Fans, thank you. Whoa! And he came to the TV studio, grabbed me. So he's like eliminating people one after. So that was the angle. Matt Sinister was Crimson, and I went to the office one night, and Kevin and Webb, Jimmy, Supreme, Chaos, and Rob, and hey, Kloss, you're gonna gig tonight. Is that okay? Like, whoa, what? And then will you do it? And then okay. And then all the guys, all right, Kloss, yeah, come on over here. Like I was just initiated into a gang. Like, all right, dude, this is what you're going to do. You're going to drink, okay, about 6 beers at least. Here's some aspirin. Take that. Okay, here's your blade. You're going to cut, and they're just showing me how to do it. Like, don't worry.
Got to thin the blood a little bit, right?
Yeah, got to thin the blood. And so, I did it on that one episode. But as an announcer, I wondered if you ever were approached, because I've never had that approach to me since. But that was one of those memorable moments where the boys were kind of like, I get my cherry popped, like this is it, literally, But I remember the tape. They gave me the tape, and it's just so that much of the blade was sticking out, so I couldn't go any deeper. Right, the tape would make it so it doesn't go deeper. All right, so I'm doing the wraparound suit and tie, and I'm drunk. Like I'm drunk, but I'm playing the straight guy. I am drunk. But when he got me, my adrenaline was the adrenaline I can't explain, man. It was when it's going to happen, and it needs to be one take, because that was it. And when he got me, I was to go down, and then I was to do that, right? And then he was going to look at the camera and then come back to me again. And I did it, but I was so drunk in the aspirin, I didn't feel anything. So I'm like, no. And I kept going deeper, like, yeah, dude. And then
so you actually gigged yourself. I thought you were going to say the Crimson gigged you.
I'm thinking I didn't do it.
Good.
Yeah. And then he comes up, grabs me. I'm like, did I get it? He goes, oh shit, dude. Yeah, you got it. Fucking stop. You're good. But again, these are some of those memorable moments, man. Like, that's outside of wrestling would be like, what the hell? Are you sadistic? What do you mean memorable moments? You know?
I remember I was working a show for Rikishi and them. It was like a Samoan Flag Day show or something. And it was out in this, field. And it was like a big festival barbecue type thing. And I think the main event was, I think it was Rikishi and I don't remember if it was Scotty Too Hottie or if it was Black Pearl. It was probably Black Pearl.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think they were working Hardcore Inc. I know it was Alcatraz for sure, was one of the guys, right? So the heels come out, and I think something was happening with the music cue or something was amiss, and there was just a delay. Mm-hmm. So just on the fly, I kind of looked over to Alcatraz. I'm like, just freaking take me out, like put the boots to me something, right? I thought he would just, club me or whatever, put the boots to me and I'd roll out. Well, Alcatraz grabs me and goes to throw me over the top, which I don't really know how to take.
Yeah.
I tried to grab, but I'm like, I guess I'm going. Went just ass over tea kettles, my back just slammed the apron, and then I just, went out to the grass and just dead fish sold it for a while. And everybody, security, everybody's like, oh my God, are you okay? But I just remember when he grabbed me, I'm like, oh shit, this isn't what I had in mind. But I guess there's no turning back now.
Yeah, right, man.
But it definitely looked real because it was.
Dude, I mean, yeah, this, and did you, so I mean, as far as wrestling goes, but can you share, Todd, before we sign off, like any memorable favorite matches that you called in California and any just moments, like the one you just shared right there, but anything that kind of stands out in your career?
Yeah, I mean, California, obviously those early UPW days, like that Edge and Christian Evolution match was a big one. First main event that I called. All that stuff with the Ballards and Hardcore Inc. We did some really fun stuff where we had Hardcore Inc. at a True Value hardware store shopping for all their weapons. And then the Ballards came and they fought in the parking lot, and the Ballards pulled the spark plug wires or something. And then so the El Jefe mobile couldn't start, and the Ballards got away. And then we did a thing we did a ladder match at the Grove where in the middle of the match, I had used my AAA card to call a flatbed tow truck, and it towed the Hardcore Inc. lowrider out of the parking lot, and it showed on the Tron, and then they so we did some fun stuff. But UPW back in the day, there was just such great talent that came through there, Daniels and Kazarian and all those guys, Damian Steele when he was there, it was always fun, his promos and stuff.
Yeah.
And then in Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, I just remember calling the Pierce Cabana feud was really fun for the title. Yeah. That was a blast. When Cabana beat Pierce for the title, I think I actually had Excalibur on the call with me for that.
Oh wow. Okay.
That was just a fun atmosphere. And then just that whole era was a lot of fun. Called a Pierce Watts match with Percy Pringle on commentary with me, and that was just hilarious. The Scorpio Sky and Willie Mack had a great feud on Hollywood. So I've gotten to call some really cool stuff out here, and so much great talent has come through here. And then one thing coming up, I want to hear what you have coming up, but a while ago something I had worked on for years to make happen, but we finally, a couple of years ago, pre-pandemic, got Championship Wrestling from Hollywood at the Irvine Improv, and we did a TV taping there.
Yeah.
And there was so much talent. Like MJF worked Willie Mack on that show. Luchasaurus was on it. David Arquette wrestled. Peter Avalon, kind of in his redemption arc to work hard and show that he can actually has love for wrestling and can actually worked hard to put on a entertaining match. And so the plan was then to make that a recurring thing. And so now coming up, I don't know when this is going to air, but March 22nd, we're going to be back at the Irvine Improv for a TV taping.
Okay.
And, should be a lot of fun.
All right, man. And then is this going to be something that's monthly or?
That's the hope. And whether it's monthly at Irvine or if it goes like from Irvine to Brea Improv to Oxnard and back around to Irvine, that's like the hope, is to have kind of a little loop and do, that be able to work build those story arcs out. So when it comes back around to Irvine, maybe it's the big kind of blow off of some of the storylines and stuff. But
wow,
we're hoping that it does well and people come out and it's something we can keep going. Cause you can't ask for a nicer venue for sure.
Oh yeah. And I will definitely come and check those out, man. And, wow, dude. Well, that's great, dude. I'm glad to hear that, Todd. And you've been with the Improv for quite a while now. And, but man, that's nice incorporating those two worlds. It's like, it's only a natural transition for you,
For sure.
So, yeah. But no, man, and hopefully sooner than later, man, we can both get back on the mic together. That would be a pleasure and an honor to me. But yeah, I don't know if this is going to air on before the March 26th. We'll keep that in mind. And any plugs though, or any shout outs and anything you want to like direct the fans, how to get more information about that, or you're talking about?
Yeah. Just follow me on social, at T Keneley on Instagram, at Todd Keneley on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I'll be posting about it, but, that'll be a good time, and we definitely want to pack the place and make it an ongoing thing. But yes, I very much would love to get in the booth with you again, put on the headsets, and have some fun. And I can't imagine that it won't happen at some point.
By the way,
I'm just glad we're both still doing it after all this.
Yeah, well, but we both obviously love it, man. And your son, of course, little Jack Tunney. He's 16 years old, but I got to share this story. You know the story I'm going to share, right?
I think I do.
Yeah. This was, we were working NWA. I want to say like Riverside, San Bernardino, something. And you and I were on commentary together. And your son was there, and he was what, 1?
Yeah, probably about 2. Yeah,
2 years old, and you just something happened. You couldn't get a sitter that day, so your son came with you, and so you're kind of watching him while you're doing the broadcast, and I'm kind of watching him too, but you had your hands full literally. And at one moment you're like, shit his diaper. and it's like, damn it. I tried to change it right before. Oh shit. And then we start smelling it and you're like, I here, just try to kind of take over right now. And then we luckily, we made it past the match. Right. And we had a little break for the next match. So while the break was going, you're finishing up, and the ring announcer just happens to go, oh, and by the way, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our broadcast team of Kris Kloss and Todd Keneley. And the light comes on both of us, and you're changing the diaper. Yeah, how you doing? Of all the times the ring announcer wants to introduce us,
when like the rodeo guys hog tie really quick, and then they that's what it felt like when I heard that song. Like,
and little Jack's like, come on, it's always about you. Change the damn diaper.
God, good times, man. Yeah, he grew up at those tapings. Poor guy.
Oh man, no, but that's great, dude. Your son, and he got to see more than most kids his age, of course, but it's glad to hear that you and him are both doing well, man. And can't believe like time flies. 16 years old, man. So all the best to him too. I hope he's doing well. And yeah, Todd, sentiments right back at you. Hopefully we can put the headsets on again soon, and no diaper changes this time, you know. And but either way, Todd.
Well, if I stay in the business long enough, somebody's gonna be changing my diaper. I'm afraid.
Oh, full circle, baby. Full circle, man.
That's right.
Cycle of life, literally.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Todd, like I said, man, always a pleasure having you on here. And for all the fans out there, thank you so much for tuning in to Cali's Finest. If you haven't done so already, like, share, comment, and subscribe to the Wrestling Chatter YouTube channel. New episodes of Cali's Finest on the 10th of every month. Once again, Todd, thank you, sir.
Thank you, man. It's great catching up.
Great catching up, man. Fans, thank you for joining us. We will see you next time right here on the Wrestling Chatter YouTube channel for Cali's Finest.